Welcome to the evening story.
I've been in a relationship with my girlfriend for almost 2 years now, but things have been getting weirder and weirder lately. It all started when she started acting distant and spending more time on her phone than with me. I didn't think much of it at first, just assumed she was busy with work or something. But then I started noticing strange texts on her phone. They were from a number I didn't recognize, and they were all really cryptic. Things like, "I see you, and don't forget what you promised." I asked her about it, but she just brushed it off and said it was nothing. One night, I woke up in the middle of the night to find her standing over me, just staring at me. When I asked her what she was doing, she didn't say anything, just walked out of the room. I tried to follow her, but she had locked herself in the bathroom. The next day, I decided to do some digging. I went through her phone and found out that the strange texts were coming from a guy she used to date. He had been in a car accident a few months ago and had been texting her ever since, saying that he was watching her and that she couldn't leave him. I confronted her about it, and she finally confessed that she had been visiting him in the hospital and that he had been threatening her if she didn't continue to see him. I was horrified. We went to the police, and they were able to intervene before anything serious happened. He was arrested and charged with stalking and harassment, and my girlfriend got a restraining order against him. It's been a few months now, and things have mostly gone back to normal, but every once in a while, I catch her staring off into space with a look of fear in her eyes. I don't think either of us will ever forget what happened.
I met my girlfriend on Tinder. She was gorgeous, funny, and we had so much in common, we hit it off right away, and before long we were inseparable. But then things started to get weird. She would show up at my apartment unannounced, and sometimes I would catch her standing outside my window just watching me. When I asked her about it, she would just laugh it off and say she was being spontaneous. One night, we were out on a date and I excused myself to use the bathroom. When I came back, I saw her scrolling through my phone. When I asked her what she was doing, she said she was just curious about who I was talking to. It was a red flag, but I ignored it. As time went on, she became increasingly possessive. She didn't want me to see my friends or family, and she would get angry if I didn't respond to her texts or calls right away. It was suffocating. One day, I came home from work to find her waiting for me in my apartment. She had made dinner and set the table, but something felt off. When I sat down to eat, I noticed that the food tasted strange. It wasn't until later that I found out she had put sleeping pills in my meal. I ended things with her after that, but the nightmare wasn't over. She started showing up at my workplace, leaving notes on my car, and even broke into my apartment while I was out. I had to get a restraining order, but I still feel like I'm constantly looking over my shoulder. Moral of the story: be careful who you trust, even if they seem perfect at first.
It started off like any other relationship. We met on a dating app and hit it off immediately. He was charming, handsome, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. We talked for hours on end, sharing our hopes, dreams, and fears. It all seemed too good to be true. As our relationship progressed, however, things started to feel off. He would become possessive and jealous, accusing me of flirting with other guys even when I wasn't. He would check my phone and social media accounts, demanding to know who I was talking to and what we were saying. I tried to brush it off as just his way of showing how much he cared, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. Then came the first time he hit me. It was a small thing at first, just a slap across the face when he thought I had been ignoring him. But it was enough to make me realize that this relationship was not healthy. I tried to leave him, but he always found a way to make me come back. He would apologize profusely, promising that it would never happen again, and I would believe him. It wasn't until the night he tried to strangle me that I finally found the strength to break free. I managed to escape his grasp and run out of the house, never looking back. He called and texted me for weeks after, begging me to come back to him, but I knew that I could never go back to that kind of relationship again. Looking back on it now, I can't believe I ever got involved with someone like that, but at the time, I was blinded by love and didn't see the warning signs. If there's one thing I've learned from that experience, It's that you should always trust your instincts and never let anyone make you feel trapped in a relationship.
Subscribe and like if you want more stories.
It all started when my friend Emma started dating a guy named Alex. They had a whirlwind romance and were inseparable from the moment they met. I was happy for them. But there was something about Alex that made me uneasy. One night, Emma and Alex invited me over for dinner. As we were eating, Alex started talking about his family's history. He told us that his great-grandfather had been a powerful sorcerer who had made a deal with a demon for eternal life. The demon had granted the wish, but at a terrible cost. Alex's great-grandfather had been cursed to live forever, but he was slowly losing his mind and becoming more and more evil with each passing year. As Alex was telling us this story, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Emma, however, was fascinated by the story and kept asking Alex questions about his family's history. That's when things started to get really strange. As we were finishing up dessert, I noticed that Emma was starting to act strangely. She kept staring off into space and muttering to herself. Alex seemed to be completely unfazed by her behavior and just kept talking about his family's history. Suddenly, Emma stood up and started speaking in a voice that was not her own. It was a deep, guttural voice that filled me with terror. The voice spoke of ancient curses and forbidden knowledge, and it was clear that Emma was no longer in control of her body. Alex just looked at me and said, "Don't worry. She'll be fine in the morning." Then he calmly got up and walked out of the room. I was paralyzed with fear as I watched Emma, or whatever was controlling her, continue to speak in that dark voice. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the voice stopped and Emma collapsed onto the floor. Alex just smiled and said, "Don't worry. It's just my great-grandfather. He likes to come out and play sometimes." I never saw Alex or Emma again after that night. I don't know what happened to them, but I know that I'll never forget the terror that I felt that night. It was as if I had stumbled into a world of dark magic and ancient curses, and I was lucky to have escaped with my life.
It was a beautiful summer day when I met her. She was sitting alone on a park bench, reading a book. And I couldn't resist the urge to go talk to her. We hit it off immediately, and before I knew it, we were inseparable. As our relationship grew, I began to notice strange things happening around us. I would wake up in the middle of the night to find her standing at the foot of our bed. Her eyes glowing in the darkness, objects would move on their own. And I could hear whispers in the empty rooms of our apartment. One day, I came home to find a circle of candles and symbols drawn on the floor of our living room. She was in the center, chanting in a language I didn't understand. When she saw me, she stopped and looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. That's when I realized I had fallen in love with a witch. The more I learned about her powers, the more frightened I became. She could control the elements, summon spirits, and cast spells with a mere flick of her wrist. But despite my fears, I couldn't bring myself to leave her. One night, we were lying in bed when she whispered something in my ear. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in my chest, as if something had pierced my heart. I looked at her in horror, but she just smiled and kissed me gently. "You'll be mine forever now," she whispered, and I knew it was true. I was bound to her for all eternity, whether I wanted to be or not. Our love had turned into something darker and more dangerous than I could ever have imagined.
I have a story that might send shivers down your spine. It's about a couple, Jane and Mike, who were deeply in love, but their relationship was plagued by a dark force. It started with small things, like unexplained scratches on their bodies and strange whispers in the night. But things escalated quickly. They would wake up in the middle of the night, gasping for air, as if something was choking them. At first, they tried to ignore it, thinking it was just their imagination. But one night, they saw it. A shadowy figure appeared at the end of their bed. Watching them, it had glowing red eyes and long, bony fingers that reached out for them. From that night on, they were tormented by this entity. They tried everything to get rid of it, from sage smudging to exorcisms, but nothing worked. It seemed to feed off their fear and was becoming stronger every day. One night, when they were in bed, they heard a loud banging on their bedroom door. It sounded like someone was trying to break it down. They got up to investigate but found nothing on the other side. When they turned around, the entity was standing right in front of them, its eyes burning with hatred. Mike and Jane knew they had to do something drastic. They packed their bags and left the house, hoping that the entity would stay behind. But as they were driving away, they saw it in the rearview mirror, following them. They eventually found a priest who was willing to help them. He performed a ritual and blessed their home. Miraculously, the entity disappeared, and Mike and Jane were finally able to live in peace. But they never forgot the terror they had experienced. They knew that the entity was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for its next victim. And they warned everyone they knew to be careful of the darkness that lurks in the world of the supernatural.
Thank you for viewing. Take care of your relationship.